All right, this video is to share an idea with you that I'm trying to make some money over the next 3 to 4 weeks in this stock VII, and I'm going to share with you why. But I got to start this video with this. It's not meant to be a recommendation to buy or sell securities, nor an offer to buy or sell securities, okay? Keep in mind, I'm a day trader. I've been running the chat room at greatstockpicks.com for over 10 years. So I'm in the market trading every day, but I'm in cash every night. I do have a small account where I do things like I'm doing here with VII. So I'm going to share with you my reasoning behind this idea, but keep in mind, this could go to zero and I'll be fine. I don't need this money. I could hold this stock for a year if I had to. Having said that, my intention is to have this be a 2 to 3 to 4 week trade, okay? And I've started buying a few days ago, maybe 4 or 5 days ago, I started buying kind of right at the close. I think here, I skipped a day, here, and I added today. So my average is where this blue line is, which is about 325. My next buy will be at 250, and that'll be my last buy, and then it's either going to work or it isn't. Like I said, I intend on holding this over 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. All right, now here's the reasoning behind it. First of all, you've got a low float stock, and it's I guess what Jim Cramer would call pin action off of basically the leader in this space. When I say leader, I don't necessarily mean the strongest company, but the one that started all this craze was DGLY when it ran from 4 to 34. And I'll show you why it ran like that in just a bit. But okay, DGLY is the one that is going to lead these others like VII when it bounces. Now, when is it going to bounce? I don't know. It's interesting to me now because it's finally after this. Yeah, this was a crazy move from 4 to 34, but now it's getting back down to where I think you might get a really nice bounce one of these days. Switch to 60-minute candles, and I kind of drew a support line right there. On August 29th, this thing gapped up and then really held for 3 to 4 hours, really held that $18 area before ripping again. Well, now it's been bleeding lower, and it's getting down. So I think it might find support and a nice bounce off of 18, especially when you couple the fact that the 20-day is right there. So you've got previous support and the 20-day. Now, even more importantly, I think, and I'm showing you finviz.com where you can find info on stocks. More importantly, I think, is these numbers right here. Shares outstanding, 2.7 million. Shares in the float, 2.2 million. That is a tiny float, which is why it ripped like this. Because for one, a lot of people couldn't find shorts, and the ones that did kept trying to short this. But when it floats that low, it doesn't take much to move it. And so they just kept buying it, or shorting it, and having to cover, which made it make that insane move. All right, so now, let's get that drawing tool off there. Now the float is 52% short. So you've got a tiny float coming into an area that I think it might bounce. Now, it doesn't have to bounce off 18. It might come down and bounce off this where it hiccuped here at 15. I don't know, okay? But this is the one I'm watching for the big turn in VII, because this is the one that's going to lead them all. So if you want to look for a nice day trade in VII instead of what I'm doing, is building a position, that's the one to watch, is DGLY. And when you get, which I think you're going to get a violent bounce one of these days because of this 52% of the float short and this tiny float. When that happens, remember VII. You might get just a nice day trade in it if you'd prefer to play it that way. Speaking of VII, let's go glance at that real quick. A couple interesting things on this one. For one, it's trading at $2.90 a share. It looks like they did sales of 34 million. That's a lot for under a $3 stock. It says book value per share $4, which is pretty impressive, and then cash per share $1.50, which is over half of the share price. So that's good. And you've got, I believe, zero long-term debt. So these are the things I learned from reading Peter Lynch 15 years ago. They don't really mean that much to me as a day trader, but I do want to glance at stuff like that when I'm considering holding anything, even overnight. And again, you have a small float here, 2.8 million, and 17% of this float is short. So there's a lot of chance for this to rebound. Now let me bring up the chart again. All right, so here's the daily on VII, and you can see that it ran all the way to $6. Well, you don't have a green day since then. So again, I'm kind of waiting. I'm not going to add any more unless it gets down to 250, and I'll show you why in a second. But if DGLY were to give me a massive bounce tomorrow, then I would add the rest of my shares, and I think we catch a nice bounce And I think I'm going to end up with a nice percentage gain in this one. But okay, panning out here. The reason I'm going to add at 250 if it gets down there. This thing has done a very nice job of holding that 250 area, with the exception of this little hiccup down here, and then that's when it took off. Okay, that's when the whole Ferguson, Missouri thing happened. Let me switch to the weekly chart. And you can see back here in 2004, it ran over 11. In 2007, I don't know what the news was on these. In 2007, ran to almost 16. So you can see what this stock is capable of. You're getting a lot more volume now and a great pullback. So to me, even a lot of people would say, well, these things shouldn't have run, with DGLY. They don't make the body cameras, but they're still in that same space. And you get that pin action all the time. Even if you believe that it's ridiculous that these things follow the other, at this point, it's almost round trip. So, trading is all about risk reward. And right now, to me, the risk down here, shorting is a little scary, especially with the low float and high short position. So it's all about risk reward. This is a good time for me, especially if we get down to 250 to add. But this is a good time to start building a position in this one. I think over the next 3 to 4 weeks, Ferguson, Missouri comes back in the spotlight when the grand jury comes out with whatever it comes out with. And whichever way it comes out, whether they're going to, indict or not, it really won't matter. It's going to throw it back in the spotlight, and police camera talk will be all the rage again. So I fully expect a nice bounce in VII. But remember, DGLY is the leader in that space. And then one last thing I want to share. I went to Google and just typed in, let me scroll up here, local police to wear body cameras. I went to Google News, okay? And you can see this isn't a fad. This, I'll just real quick. You can see Chicago listed Boulevard, which I think is in Missouri. I'm from Missouri. Fort Myers Police, and then we'll just keep scrolling. New Jersey mandates cameras for police cars. Spokane, prosecutor turned senator supports police body cameras. Miami Beach, and the list goes on and on. That's just page 1 of Google News over the past few days, I think. When you Google local police to wear body cameras. So I fully believe that every police officer in the United States will be wearing these. This isn't a knee-jerk reaction. I think this is the way it's going to go. There was another article that I found on a different search, the NAACP, fully backing body cameras being mandated. Obviously, that makes sense. So I do think this is going to be not a trend. I think it's just going to be the new way. Okay, and so this is not a bad space to be in after this big pullback, and for the other reasons I gave you. So that's my bull case on VII. I'm not really wanting to get emails tearing that case apart, because remember, I'm looking for a trade, and I gave you my thesis, and I could very easily be wrong, but we'll see how it plays out. If nothing else, if it doesn't play out the way I think, then how fun is it? There's an official archive of my idea, and the whole world can laugh at me for losing money, right? All right, guys, have a good night.